Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the LSESU German and Spanish Society, I'm delighted to welcome you to another exciting event which is part of this year's anniversary symposium. Today's panel will discuss the future of Europe, Spain and the UK and the challenging road that lies ahead. Thank you to our guest, Spain's Prime Minister, Mr. Pedro Sánchez, for finding the time to be with us today. And of course, our discussion chair, LSE Director, Baroness Shafiq. We are very excited to hear about your insights, so without further ado, I will hand over to you, Minouche.
Thank you very much, and thank you especially to the German Society and the Spanish Society at the LSE for organizing. Prime Minister, it's a real pleasure to have you here joining us virtually, at least, at the LSE. As most of you know, Pedro Sánchez has been the president of the government of Spain since June 2018, winning his second mandate. He has been a member of parliament representing Madrid, leader of the opposition, and general secretary of the Spanish Socialist Workers Party. He also has a doctorate in economics, and the only flaw in what is otherwise a perfect career is the failure of the London School of Economics to get him to come to the LSE. So we'll have to set that right at some point in the future. But he is a committed social democrat and a European, and has led Spain during an incredibly challenging time. We're delighted to have you here, and we look forward to the day when we can welcome you in person at LSE. But meanwhile, over to you to talk to us about Europe, the UK, and Spain, the challenging road ahead.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for your introduction. Allow me to first thank the London School of Economics and the German Society for inviting me to participate in their annual symposium. I am extremely glad to share this debate with you. And thank you as well to the Spanish Society, which is co-hosting this afternoon's event. I am particularly happy to be at least virtually again at this school that so greatly contributes to critical thinking. I am convinced that now more than ever, we need to preserve and build more bridges between public institutions and academia. It comes as no surprise to hear that Europe and the international community are facing an unprecedented challenge. Just a year ago, we were struck by a virus we knew nothing about, except for three facts. The first one is it was a potential lethal and highly contagious. Secondly, it represented a great challenge to society. And finally, it could overwhelm the public and private resources we had to fight it. We had to confront an unexpected threat without the appropriate tools. It seems that we are stating the obvious when we recall where we were and what was happening this time last year. However, it is still necessary to remember the point we were at a year ago so that we can fully grasp how far we have come and depict what can lie ahead. Millions of lives have been lost to this virus in the world, and many more are enduring the subsequent economic crisis that the pandemic has generated. Faced with that challenge, my country and Europe and the European Union as a whole have not remained inactive. We in the European Union have tried to fight the health crisis while protecting European Union freedoms. It has not been an easy road, I can tell you. We have had to strike difficult balances, always bearing in mind that health comes first. We decided to join our efforts through the Commission, the European Commission, for the purchase of vaccines, and we have to reorganize that the European Union, recognize that the European Union played a decisive role by early supporting and working with the private sector for the development of safe and effective vaccines at record speed. That coordinated response is now enabling the rollout of the vaccine and the protection of all European citizens, no matter where they live, avoiding a race between European Union member states to get vaccines on their own account. While fighting the virus, we also had to mitigate the socioeconomic impact of the economy. This is a major challenge that we are also facing. First, we put some of our common fiscal rules on hold, so we could employ all the national resources at our disposal. We then establish European instruments to support workers, businesses, and member states, such as the SURE program, which has been key, I can tell you, to alleviate the increase in unemployment throughout the continent. But most importantly, we were able to reach an agreement on a recovery fund, Next Generation European Union, which will boost our recovery and lay the foundations for a modern and more sustainable Europe. Next Generation European Union is unprecedented in both its size and way of financing. It sets us in the path towards further integration at the European Union level. Together with the new multi-annual financial framework, it is the largest stimulus package ever financed through the European Union budget, and will allow us to pursue our priorities within the European Union and our global agenda. There has been room for improvement in managing the pandemic, and there still is, but let us not forget that it has been a learning by doing process. That does not mean, however, that I am taking a, I would say, complacent attitude, or that I minimize the gravity of the current situation or the loss of lives that we are enduring. Much remains to be done for our citizens and for the international community. COVID-19 has affected us greatly, but it is having even more ravaging socioeconomic effects in other areas of the world, like Latin America and Africa, to name a few. We all need to work hand in hand, and that is why Spain and the UK are participating together in initiatives like the ACT Accelerator, where we are co-leaders from the very outset, and we are playing our part in ensuring affordable and equitable access to vaccines for all. For that purpose, the Spanish government approved last month a solidarity plan for universal access to vaccines that we will channel through Team Europe and our participation in the COVAX facility, among others. We have also supported, together with the UK and other European partners, G20 initiatives to ease the heavy burden of debt on low-income countries, and we must continue to ensure that humanitarian aid and development cooperation, which are now more needed than ever, continue to reach their recipients. We're dealing also, my dear friends, with neither an isolated nor a cyclical crisis. On top of the pandemic itself, what we are witnessing after a year with COVID-19 is the reshaping of the world as we knew it. The onus is on us to ensure that it comes out of it stronger, and that we as a whole transition together to more sustainable and resilient models without leaving anyone behind. It is clear that the biggest steps in international cooperation have usually stemmed from common crises, and this is not an exception. It remains confident, however, that this particular pandemic can become a turning point, bringing about a fundamental leap forward in international cooperation that will endure for generations. For that to happen, we need to underpin multilateralism and international solidarity. Only a joint effort will bring us towards a more cohesive and more inclusive society. In Spain, we are convinced that we need more centripetal rather than centrifugal movements to ensure a smooth transition to a greener, digital, and more sustainable models. It is urgent to secure that highest level of welfare for workers and citizens as a whole, and that translates into a more social Europe. We also need to extend that vision to our relationships with our neighbors and partners. Europe has to continue to lead in addressing the major challenges of our times. The defense of peace and democracy, that is certainly our threat, migration management and protecting of asylum seekers, as well as the fight against climate change, just to name a few. And in this sense, the post-COVID-19 that I envision is one that uses its democratic legitimacy to stand up for its citizens' expectations, especially for the youth. A European Union that finds unity in its diversity, that protects human and social rights, the planet and its biodiversity, And the European Union that plays a relevant role, it must play a relevant role in the global agenda. And in this sense, let me say a few words on an important concept that everybody is talking about nowadays, the strategic autonomy of the European Union. We see precisely in this context, not as an end in itself, but as a tool for the European Union to be a reliable partner, to ensure it has the required instruments and capacities to defend our values, and finally to a clear vision of how it can contribute to the multilateral agenda. That will enable us, I believe, to send our partners the genuine message that we believe in cooperation, not just in our self-interest, but as a way to address the key challenges facing in the international community. In this big picture, we are counting on the UK. Both the UK and the European Union have the responsibility, I believe, very much on this, to work for a shared objective, which is to come out globally stronger from this crisis, this unprecedented crisis. I do not sympathize with those who structure the future of the EU-UK relations in terms of rivalry. We have gone through a long journey in the past few years, first agreeing on the terms of the UK's departures from the European Union and then defining the legal infrastructure for managing our interdependence. However, we need to be aware that our realities are so intervened that our future will go far beyond any specific agreements. Much has been already accomplished. We have finalized a trade and cooperation agreement that sets the basis for the exchange of goods and services, as well as bilateral cooperation in key areas such as health and cybersecurity. It also ensures a reasonable level playing field and adequate solutions on governance. As you know, the European Union and the UK have also negotiated an agreement on information security and another one on nuclear energy. I think it's really, really important, those agreements. But we cannot see our relationship only in terms of socioeconomic interdependence, let alone base it solely on competition and certainly not on confrontation. We need to be able to reflect together on the Europe and the world that we want to contribute to shape. There is an underlying common European identity that hopefully will transcend the sovereignty debate. I am referring to a similar way of understanding the world we live in. That should be our common ground and the larger framework for our bilateral relations. We both probably need time to adapt to a new way of interacting. The UK probably also needs some room for self-discovery in a post-European Union scenario. We are already starting to see what is and is not working properly. We will have to find ways to overcome these difficulties. We also need to accept that there will be bumps and friction along the way, and that they are natural and can be overcome if properly addressed. The European Union will remain a solid partner of the UK, and both on equal footing should build the relationship on trust, goodwill, and frank dialogue. After all, my dear friends, the UK is a key neighbor for us. It shares with us geographical interest, and it is a relevant player in the global agenda. It is also in our mutual interest to cooperate. The European Union needs a strong and stable UK because their success, your success, will also be our success. If the European Union remains a solid partner of the UK, so does Spain. So does Spain. The UK and Spain have always had intense and privileged relations due to historic, economic, and social and cultural ties. Up to the present day, Brexit has taken up a large part of our bilateral efforts. We are tirelessly working on mitigating the impact it is having for our two countries. The task is not easy, I can tell you it's not easy, but we have a very encouraging framework. Spain is among the first European destinations of British residents, and so is the UK for Spaniards. Over 260,000 British citizens live in Spain, and around 240,000 Spaniards live in the UK. Around 1 million of British citizens own property in our country, in Spain, and many British companies are active, very active in Spain, and Spanish companies play a big role in the UK market in key sectors such as telecom, aviation, or financial services. Spain is at the top of the list of trade partners for the UK. In trade in service, for instance, Spain is the UK's second partner, and the UK is the first client for Spain's exports. Our degree of bilateral direct investment is also remarkable. The UK is our second biggest foreign investor, and we are also the UK's second biggest foreign investor. That means many things. That means having to find solutions on many fronts, from transportation to health assistance, unemployment support, social security, or access to education. This is still a work in progress, but it's also, I believe, a big opportunity for our countries. Even if we regret, and I said this repeatedly in different public statements, even if we regret to have seen the UK leave the European Union, we respect this decision, and we want to try to make the most of it. We see it is a chance to boost our bilateral relationship and configure a new partnership based on 3 pillars. The first one is economic, of course, social, and finally, academic. The potential of our relationship is evident. As for Gibraltar, negotiations have already borne remarkable fruits in terms of cooperation and managing our interdependence. So far, we have signed a fiscal agreement and 4 memoranda of understanding, and we have agreed the fundamentals for the post-Brexit future of Gibraltar, which will now pave the way for an agreement with the European Union. These are historical achievements and a good example of how, without giving up on our interests and demands, we choose cooperation, collaboration, rather than confrontation. The future of Gibraltar does not have to be an irritant in our bilateral relations with the UK, but rather a showcase of how we foresee the UK's relationship with the European Union and with my country, with Spain. That is why we believe in a bottom-up and a pragmatic approach for our bilateral relations. There are many areas of mutual interest to build upon. From them, we could start reshaping our establishing first a new political partnership through a robust, structured dialogue, deepening our regular communication at all levels. Secondly, a new economic partnership, boosting our economic and trade relationship so that we unleash its full potential. There are key areas for where exchange could increase: financial services, infrastructure, clean energy, biotechnology, renewable energy, or transportation, to name a few. Mobility, industrial policy, and climate policies are areas where we could look at a joint approach. They could also benefit from the strength of our company's know-how. And thirdly, a new security partnership. Our policy and judicial cooperation is already very intense, very, very intense. But the fight against terrorism, cybersecurity, and e-justice are relevant areas that could profit from new ways of collaboration. And let me also name the new defense partnership. My country, Spain, and the UK are allies on many fields. We are allies in NATO, and they have collaborated in multiple projects. Maybe you don't know that Spain exports more defense components to the UK than to France, for example. Therefore, our cooperation on security and defense must go on. And finally, why we don't boost this new partnership on culture and education. No? The participation on Erasmus Plus is a gap we need to bridge in the best interest of our students. More than 4,000 British students have been choosing Spain for their Erasmus Plus, and around 4,300 Spaniards choose the UK in the last Erasmus Plus calls. A new social partnership too, promoting cooperation between our cities and regions. Many of our autonomous communities have already voiced their interest in intensifying bilateral relations. And I cannot forget to mention the relevance of our already existing social exchange. We have a vibrant civil society and powerful people-to-people contacts that we need to preserve. The British-Spanish tertulias or the Spanish Society at the LSE are a great example of it. They, contribute to a better understanding between our governments and, of course, our societies and countries. And finally, on the global agenda, we need to remember that the UK left the European Union, but not Europe. On top of our common history, Spain and the UK share their membership in relevant international organizations and fora where we can develop common strategies. Spain and the UK have already been working, for instance, together in the United Nations for the agenda for women, peace and security, just to give, I think, a very, very good example of this collaboration. We can also explore joint initiatives in certain regions. We share an Atlantic history and perspective that should enable us to work together in geographical areas that thus far are close to our history and our future. We at the Spanish government are already ready to work to strengthen our bilateral relationship with the UK as I mentioned before. And let me finish just saying that we at the Spanish government are ready to work to strengthen our bilateral relations with the UK as much as possible, since we want to deliver for our citizens. Expectations, I can tell you, are high, and we need to do our utmost to meet them. You also have a share in this endeavor. Many thanks for your time, and thank you very much for this invitation.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for that thoughtful, comprehensive, and really, in the end, quite hopeful speech. If I may ask just a few questions. Now, obviously, the pandemic has highlighted inequalities in all of our societies, and Spain and the UK have been some of the worst affected European countries as a result of the virus. As Prime Minister, what has been the biggest challenge for you in managing the pandemic in Spain? And you mentioned also that this is an opportunity for more international cooperation. The world hasn't done very well in managing the COVID pandemic internationally in terms of international collaboration. What are your thoughts and the lessons that we've learned in the face of this crisis, and how could we have better international cooperation going forward?
Thank you very much for these questions. I would say that the biggest lessons that we have to learn from this crisis, this global crisis, is that we need to strengthen our multilateral cooperation. So, for instance, we had witnesses during this last year that really big countries putting into question the work of key center multilateral organizations to deal with this pandemic, such as the World Health Organization. So we need to really strengthen our multilateral cooperation and multilateral organizations. So in my opinion, the UN and system must be strengthened by all countries, especially the biggest one, the strongest one. And then, of course, the UK, Spain, New York in the beginning of the pandemic in the United States, Italy in the beginning in Europe. We suffer the most this pandemic because we were and we are international hubs. Absolutely, we are international hubs, and that is why we realized that our strength were in this vis-a-vis the pandemic, our biggest weakness. So I would say that the lessons that we need to learn from this at the national level is, first of all, we need to strengthen our capacities and our strategic autonomy. This is something that I explained in my first speech. I think this is crucial, and we suffer this lack of strategic autonomy, for instance, in the first wave, not only in Europe, but apart from China and other Asian countries. Secondly, I think that the second lesson that we need to learn is that we must invest in science, research, innovation, particularly in areas that are proving to be crucial for our near future, for instance, health. And finally, this is something that I also witness in my country, but I believe this is the same in the rest of the European countries, is the need to strengthen primary care and the care system for elderly people. So this, in my opinion, would be lessons that we need to, let's say, to learn from this crisis and to modernize and actualize in the near future.
Okay. In your speech, you also said that there's an opportunity for renewal after this crisis, and you've just unveiled an ambitious economic recovery plan for Spain. And the EU, for the first time, has pooled its fiscal capacity to finance post-COVID recovery. We had Olaf Scholz at the LSE last week, and he talked about this being a Hamiltonian moment for Europe in terms of pooling fiscal capacity. How do you envisage Spain and the EU will change after the pandemic? How fundamental a change is this?
Well, I think that we in my opinion, the agreement that the European Union reached in July last year, this is perhaps not. We don't see it today, but we will see it in the midterm in some years. Is an historical step, more or less the same importance that the creation of the single market or the creation of the euro, the single currency. Because in the end, what we reach is an agreement where we all go to the financial markets in order to get public debt and finance specific programs linked to two transitions, the digital transition and the ecological transition. So the political message of this agreement, in my view, is that the European Union understood that we, first of all, need to give a positive and integrative response to this crisis. And secondly, that we understand as a common political project, that the basis of the competitiveness of our economies and our political project are founded on these two major pillars, the ecological transition and the digital transition. And that to do so, we need also to incorporate three integrative perspectives. The first one is the social integration, especially for the youth. The second is the gender integration, because unfortunately, women, 51% of our societies, are the most damaged by these the economic and social consequences of this pandemic. And finally, the territorial integration, the territorial cohesion, because it is also true that we are going to witness territories that are going to be especially damaged because of this pandemic. Perhaps I'm thinking on territories that are and their economies are well-founded on the tourist sector. So that is why I think it's not only important to understand that we need to engage resources and make this modernization of our economy on these two pillars, the transition towards a more digitalized economy and also the ecological transition, but also to give an integrative response to these transitions.
Thank you very much. Prime Minister, you gave a wonderful description of all the complicated interconnections between the UK and Spain, both among people, among business, among civil society, in universities. And now with the UK outside the EU, and with Spain and the UK obviously so closely intertwined, how do you think the relationship between the two countries will evolve over the medium term? What are the issues that will divide us? What are the issues that might bring us together? And if you had to predict what the relationship will be like in a decade, what would you predict?
Well, I said it in my first speech. It is a pity that the UK leaves the European Union, but this is something that we respect. And this is a decision that has been taken by the Parliament, the British Parliament. So we need to redefine our bilateral relations. And in my opinion, it is true that it's not going to be the same because we are now, let's say, different parts, but we share the same continent, Europe, and also we share common values. We see the world more or less in many fields with the same eyes and same values. And for that, I do believe that we need to strengthen our collaboration on security, and also on defense, also on education, culture, of course, the academia, and finally on many issues on the economic side. For instance, the financial services, and so on and so forth. So I do believe that what is really important is the attitude. And so far, the attitude of the Spanish institutions, the Spanish government, and also the British government is being very, very positive and very constructive. And with this attitude, I think that we can redefine these relations with a very, very good basis.
Okay. Well, I have to say, at the LSE, we're very proud of our connections to Spain, and we have some of the most brilliant Spanish students here and have a long tradition of exchange with Spanish universities and with Spanish students. And so we're very eager to see that continue to thrive. And maybe with that, it's appropriate for me to hand over to Jose, who is the president of the Spanish Student Society here at LSE, to close this event. Jose?
Hi, I don't know why my video is not working right now, but I just want to say thank you, Minouche, and thank you to our guest, Pedro Sánchez, for this great opportunity to listen to some very valuable insights on a topic of incredible importance in the current political panorama. It really is a pleasure to be able to host the Prime Minister of Spain in our university and to not only emphasize the important role of Spain within European affairs, but its relevance in UK politics and the changing dynamics between both countries. Representing the LSCSU Spanish Society, we continue to strive to make the voice of the Spanish community heard internationally, and I cannot think of many better ways than hosting Pedro Sánchez today. To conclude, I must add that the LSCSU German Society is continuing its symposium, and that there are many other great events coming up. We at the Spanish Society will also continue to host events in the coming weeks, so make sure to look at our social media. So thanks to everyone for attending the event, and again, thank you to our guest and Minouche, and the LSE for making these events possible. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prime Minister. We've really enjoyed it.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure, and I hope to meet you again physically in
person
UK.
soon.
In person soon. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.